I got some interesting information about the Google leak today. I'm not sure that this episode is going to be about getting users, getting customers, getting clients, but I can tell you this, it's going to be entertaining. It's going to be juicy. It is an article containing all this stuff about how the Google leak surfaced. I didn't know a lot of this, and I skimmed it when I got it, and I said, wow. Okay, I skimmed it, I said, I gotta just share this on the pod. There might be some stuff in here about how to do SEO better because the author is a legendary SEO himself, and actually I shared him a few episodes ago. His name is Dejan Petrovic, and he did an experiment, a well-known experiment, where he just copied people's content and put it on his own site to see if his higher domain authority would allow his content to rank above the original content. He stole people's content, put it on a higher SEO domain authority site, and lo and behold, it ranked above the original content. And so he proved how important SEO domain authority and backlinks are. And this experiment that he ran, eventually Google Search Console, he got a message in Google Search Console saying, hey, take these pages down or you're going to be penalized. And then he took the pages down. He got a lot of clout from doing this. A lot of people know him from this. And I shared him for doing this a few days ago. And then I learned, so juicy. So then I spent around 2 hours this morning answering people getting back to me on my newsletter, answering people messaging me on LinkedIn, adding me on LinkedIn and messaging me and saying, I listen to the pod, I watch your reels and your TikToks, and I appreciate all of that. Everyone, if anyone listening who sent me one of these messages, thank you so much. You should have just gotten a message from me responding. So I spent 2 hours this morning answering these messages. And this guy, his name is Shaheen Adibi. I hope I'm pronouncing your name correctly, Shaheen. If you want to find him on LinkedIn, his headline is Scaling Brands from 100,000 to a Million MRR, Obsessed with the Nexus of SEO, CRO, Content Marketing, and AI. And so he shares with me this article that I'm going to share. And he said, dude, this algo leak story just got better. So he shares this, and I just see it today. And the article is from June 6th. So it's from a couple of days ago, and I haven't seen it, but I skimmed it and I said, this is juicy. This is freaking juicy. You know, I've been to a lot of farmers markets around Europe. So many farmers markets in Italy, farmers markets in Ukraine, farmers markets in Poland. Oh, in Serbia, there was this great farmers market in Belgrade, farmers markets in Spain. But my favorite farmers market was actually in Romania. It was in Bucharest, Romania. And I went there several times a week. One of the things that I really loved about this farmers market in Bucharest, Romania, was this crazy farmers market, 3 levels, then bazaars surrounding it, so much going on, so much activity. There was this grilled meat stand out in the back that was like famous in Bucharest. It was so good. The food was so fresh, all these different levels of shops and merchants, meat and bread, and so much produce. Produce for as far as the eye can see. Various items, clothes, cooking items, houseware items, so much going on. And the produce was so fresh. And one of the things that I loved most, flowers, I used to buy flowers from there, but one of the things that I loved most were its peaches, because I would get the best peaches from this farmer's market in Bucharest, Romania. And you know why those peaches were so good? I want to tell you why these peaches were so good. You might already know what I'm going to say, but the peaches were some of the juiciest peaches that I ever had in my life. Some of the juiciest pieces. You would bite into it and it would almost explode in your mouth. The peach was so juicy. And that's what you're going to get on this episode about the Google leak. That's what you're getting about the Google leak, because this felt freaking juicy when I was skimming it. So without further ado, it's called I Have One Thing to Say. It's from DejanMarketing.com. From Dan Petrovic, I have one thing to say. Let's start. The anonymous guy who leaked Google's repo information wiped out the most valuable strategic resource in the history of SEO and rendered it near worthless. Imagine a history in which Alan Turing speaks to the press announcing they've cracked the enigma. What do you think the enemy forces would do with that information? In case you're wondering, ask Sun Tzu and see what he thinks. That, ladies and gentlemen, is our current historical timeline, the one in which we told Google that what we know is now public domain knowledge, forcing their hand to take action and close up any means of manipulation. Google is not the enemy here, but they are to blame for being too slow to take action when I tried to stop the whole fiasco. And then he shares a screenshot. It's from va ... at google.com. So he's hiding the email. It says, the status of this is closed. And the message is, hi, although it may come as a surprise, this is actually working as intended and is a feature of the product. In our understanding, this data is intended to be accessible as it is part of an open source project. That said, if you think we misunderstood your report and you see a well-defined security risk, please let us know what we missed. Thanks again for your report and time, the Google Bug Hunter team. Now, as I previously said on the podcast and in videos, the Google leak was actually floating around for years, but it wasn't shared with the right people until the end of May. Well, actually it was, but this person didn't really share it any further. And then some crazy stuff happened, and that's what this article shares, the crazy stuff that happened. So the author, Dan, comments on the screenshot of the person from Google and says, wait, what? Yes, that's right. I've independently discovered the exposed repo and have been studying it in solitude for a considerable amount of time. Dissecting, analyzing, mapping, correlating. It was the most fun and exciting time of my SEO career. I had pre-processed the whole repo and saved as a clean JSON file, which I later added to a SQLite database with FTS, and I could just look up what I wanted. Later on, I was chatting to my RTX about this data in an RAG setup and eventually uploaded the whole 500,000 tokens of it to Gemini 1.5 Pro, who I tasked to map everything for me and join the dots. So Gemini helped him analyze the leak, and he was maybe the first person to find it, one of the first people. This resulted in an enormous corpus of well-organized data, who I later passed on to Mike King. I'll talk about that in a minute. And if you remember, Mike King was credited with going through the Google leak when it was found. Rand gave it to Mike, and Mike did a great job dissecting it and sharing what he learned. So Dan continues. Internally, we were paranoid. My agency partner, Mike Jolly, had to come to my house to review the data. I would not dare email or upload anywhere in fear of a public leak of something so valuable. You're probably still wondering about the screenshot though, so let me clarify. Once I realized that the repo isn't likely to be patched up, I started to get nervous and weighed my options. After a considerable amount of deliberation, I decided the best course of action would be to shut this down. I wanted to be in control of this information. The reasoning was that if this was discreetly reported and did not get to the news, Google would likely not have to take any major action to sanitize, secure, or change in order to prevent manipulation. So he's saying if this didn't blow up, Google wouldn't have to take any major action to prevent manipulation to search. And of course, that is not what happened. So a strange thing happens. About the same time I report this to Google, oh my gosh. So a strange thing happens. About the same time I report this to Google, the anonymous source passes it to Rand. Talk about a coincidence. So Rand Fishkin is credited with blowing up the leak. He made an article on his website, SparkToro, and that article was called An Anonymous Source Shared Thousands of Leaked Google Search API Documents with Me. Everyone in SEO should see them. And I read it on the podcast. That was my first episode about the leak, and that episode did really well. And that was Rand Fishkin. And he shared that because he had a bone to pick with Google. He had done all this research on how the Google search engine results pages really worked, on how Google really worked, and Google discredited him. They called his findings, quote unquote, made up crap. He was discredited in lots of ways. So he wrote that article because he had a bone to pick. All right, so Dan continues. Google's security team then closes my report and leaves me completely baffled. I persisted and reached out to some pretty high-ranking Googlers in hope to be treated seriously, and it worked. They reopened my case. This screenshot is so funny. Quote unquote, well, that doesn't sound good. Thanks for flagging. Let me ask around. Then Dan Petrovic, the author, says, I can see you guys already fixed the PHP and Java repos and now include intended content instead of internal API content. Do you still maintain this is working as intended? ? This ticket is closed. It's a little bit confusing. And then the status was updated to triaged. Instead of red, it's now yellow. Dan Petrovic says in the article, he says, we went back and forth a couple of times as they weren't thorough enough. For example, they'd let the Elixir repo exposed after patching PHP and Java, but it all got sanitized in the end, and I was given credit and a $5,000 reward for the report. The amount I laughed at and had the opportunity to renegotiate. It's literally just press a button if you're not happy with the bounty. So he asked for more just with a button press. And then he says, but decided to stay focused and grateful that my main objective was accomplished. The repos were fixed. Well, almost. The cached hexadoc stuff was still there, and despite the capacity to cause harm, Google refused to de-index on ethical grounds, quoting that they hold themselves to the same standards and rules as everyone else. Isn't that nice? They refuse to de-index because they hold themselves to the same standards and rules as everyone else. And Dan continues, he says, they were worried though. Now this is someone ko ... at google.com. Hey Dan, I have a quick question. Do you have plans to disclose the issue publicly? And if so, would you mind notifying us ahead of time with the details you want to share? Anything is helpful, like the fact that you plan to disclose or a potential date, a write-up draft, etc. The decision to disclose is fully yours in our programs, but any heads up helps us coordinate things internally. Congrats on the reward again. And then Dan Petrovic's reply was, my personal policy on the matter is as follows. Number 1, open about what I found, the fact I reported it, and that it was patched up. Number 2, no plans of disclosing specifics to the public. For example, naming systems, modules, or attributes, detailed write-up, blog posts, talking to the media, no plans of doing that. Dan says, you mentioned giving you a heads up in case I plan to disclose things. I don't, but I don't know who my contact is as your system anonymizes the emails. Some clarity would be good. For example, would you prefer I don't even mention the nature of my find? There's an obscure and unpublicized line about it on my profile page. What if it comes up in conversation or as a question while I'm at stage during a conference talk? Generally happy to make things easy for you, just let me know. More importantly, you should probably take care of the repo version reference. And then he shares hexdocs.pm with the Google API Content Warehouse. And then he adds, or at least remove it from search results. And then he shares a search result. And that was that. That was his response. And the next thing in this article is, and then I saw this cryptic tweet. And it's from Mike King. And Mike King says, so crazy. Mike King says, just got my hands on something incredible. We're setting SEO internet on fire next week. And Dan says, he writes in this article now, he says, I messaged Mike and confirmed what he had. My original intention was to try to stop it from going public. However, I learned that Rand had this information and that it was passed to him by an anonymous source. It took a minute, but I realized that if it wasn't Mike and Rand, it would be someone else to link people to the repo. I was still furious. I just lost control over the most important strategic asset of my career and over a month of my life, but happy about who will bring it to public. 2 good friends that I love and respect. Dan writes, I decided to stay out of it and passed all of my research methods and the search tool to Mike, all of it, who then published his article, which I reviewed as a draft, but did not co-author or contribute to in any way other than sharing my research. For the record, Mike insisted on crediting me in his article, but I didn't want to be named until the buzz died down. And like it was said before, many of you owe an apology to Rand. Back in 2015, I wrote this piece, User Behavior Data as a Ranking Signal, describing the monitoring engine and how Google collects user behavior signals from Chrome and how it's useful to improve search. Not many paid attention to it, and suddenly it's big news. So what he's referring to is that one of the things that the Google leak showed is how important click data is to Google, because Google uses click data, click-through rate data, how much time users are spending on search engine results pages, how much time users are spending on the results that they get, all sorts of this data. And this data was a key motivation, as Rand calls it, for creating the Chrome browser. But Rand was discredited. He was discredited when he had these theories, even though he had proven them. With many SEO experiments, he had proven them, but he was discredited. All right, so Dan Petrovic writes, and we're nearing the end of this article now. He said, so what was my plan? I had been staring at this data for such a long time, I had already decided to take a break from it and let it defrag in my brain. During that time, my plan was to share what I had with Nick Ranger and the rest of my team as a starting point and then reach out to industry people I trust, Mike included. in hope we can form a think tank and quietly extract value and circulate usable intel discreetly to the rest of the community. As an agency, our internal policy is that the information gained from the leak is now compromised and not useful as actionable intel. We're confident that Google's busy preventing means of exploitation from the knowledge gained and will not be investing time and energy in analysis of these systems for the purpose of client work. There are a few aspects of it that we believe cannot be replaced as they are too ingrained into Google's DNA, and so we'll run a few tests to explore that. Oh my gosh. And so he shares this graph of Google's volatility, and everything's pretty stable until the time this leak comes out, and the volatility in the graph. You know what? I'm going to share this graph on the podcast. I'm just going to put it in behind me on the podcast, and if you're looking, you will see the volatility during this time more than doubles. It looks like it goes up 2.5 times. Crazy. And the caption is, Google's volatility score since the leak reaches an all-time record. And it's from Algorithm. And Algorithm is a very trusted source. When I was at iProspect, one of the leading SEO agencies for blue chip companies like Procter & Gamble. When I was there doing SEO for these huge companies, we were using Algorithm to look at the volatility. And it is up 2.5x. Crazy. Okay. So now we are at the end of this article. Silver linings and the future of search. Yes, there are SEOs around the world right now investing their time and energy into little schemes that will be rendered useless in a matter of weeks or months. And that sucks, but I do believe some good will come out of all of this. Google may finally take the leap, abandon this incredibly messy and manual jumble of algorithms and metrics stacked and bolted onto each other, and properly keep up with the new force in the industry. I'm going to come back to something I've been saying a bunch in the past 8 weeks, which is I think we need to deconstruct the various reasons why we often prefer our own artisanal ranking systems over an essentially end-to-end deep system like Ads has, and how we might bring those attributes to deep machine learning models instead of just thinking about how we bring the quality benefits of deep machine learning models into our current understandable models. Google is using the word artisanal for what I describe as incredibly messy and manual jumble of algorithms and metrics stacked and bolted onto each other, and I find that cute. Search is not dead, but it's changing in a major way, and as much as SEOs like to make fun of generative results, how we expect to retrieve information and interact with the source of information is starting to shift away from the traditional paradigm to a new and better way. A query with 20 open tabs and a confused user is not a good user experience. It's true. A synthesized answer with references is. This is the way forward and will affect both the organic and paid ecosystem for better. Advertisers will love it. A customer just asked Google to plan a trip to Paris with a spouse and 2 kids, and Google provided a paid link to services to take care of their dog, buy the nasal spray for the kid with blocked sinuses, and a rental car once in France. That was paid ads. The organic links will be guided to special places to visit in line with this family's interests and characteristics. The only problem is that with the current trend of OpenAI making deals with major publishers, the death of the small personal website is imminent. Hoping Google changes that and keeps their sources diverse and useful. My hope is that Google will become what I hoped it would a decade ago when I wrote Conversations with Google and get back on my predicted future timeline. And that's all I have to say about that. And that is the article. I think a lot of SEOs are worried about the future of search. I'm not at all. And I've shared this on the podcast before. I've shared this in my videos before. If you can get your information to show up on Google search, you can also get your information to be recommended by AI chatbots like ChatGPT and Gemini and Perplexity and Grok and so many more. Funny enough, a lot of these systems use very similar ranking algorithms for prioritizing the information that is given to users of the chatbots. My greatest mentor in search engine optimization, this guy Yas Hogg, he became head of SEO at Omnicom, and Omnicom is the second largest publicly traded marketing agency in the world. And he was head of SEO there. And he called it search experience optimization. He said, that is how SEO is changing. It's not just search anymore, it's chatbots. He said search experience optimization. And it's the new SEO, but there's a lot of stuff that's still similar. You know, I made this video and it went a lot more viral than I expected it to. And it's about how companies are gaming user-generated content websites by hiring brand ambassadors who are not detectably affiliated with the brands. And then these brand ambassadors are posting on these sites, using all these keywords, posting repeatedly on these sites about the brands and why they're great. And you know who trains off this user-generated content? It's OpenAI, it's Google, it's everyone. Everyone is training off this user-generated content, and this user-generated content is being prioritized in search. And so people sometimes, instead of just using their own websites, they're using user-generated content sites. However, if you are targeting the right keywords, bottom of funnel keywords, which I've talked about so many times before, your own website might have enough domain authority to go after bottom of funnel keywords, because most of the time, bottom of funnel keywords are overlooked and they're non-competitive and they're really lucrative to have super high conversion rate. I really want to read one more thing. This is kind of a long podcast. I've been recording for 30 minutes now, but you know what? I'm going to read it. I'm having a blast right here. I got to go for my haircut in 50 minutes, but I have just enough time to read this to you. So I wrote this for my newsletter. A few weeks ago, I was sitting on this boat on a river when I wrote it. It was beautiful out. I was there with my laptop and a coffee. I was feeling so good, and I wrote this so fast, and it turned out to be one of my favorite newsletters. And it's on my website if you want to read it yourself. It's called SEO Down the Funnel, and I'm going to read it and then end the podcast and go get a haircut. Okay, SEO Down the Funnel by yours truly, by me, and here it goes. Marketers and SEOs are waking up to something I discovered 4 years ago while living in Minsk. There was little for me to do. I had just launched a SaaS the month before, software as a service, the month before while living in Kiev, and I was looking at competing companies that were getting tons of users with SEO. I found one that was focused entirely on a different kind of keyword. I'm about to launch a program, videos, and my templates about these keywords. I call them compact keywords, but I want to share here the basics of what I discovered those 4 fateful years ago. I was recently asked, what would an example be for compact keywords versus non-compact? My response, compact would be collaboration software with intuitive learning. Non-compact would be enterprise collaboration software. Another non-compact would be what is collaboration software? Here is the difference between these. Collaboration software with intuitive learning, this is purchase intent. The searcher knows what they're looking for, they just don't know the brand that will give it to them. The conversion rate on these keywords is high as fuck. That's what I wrote in the article. Enterprise collaboration software now is a keyword. It's exploring a bit. The searcher is trying to learn about collaboration software for large companies, but it's more explorational. And then what is collaboration software as a keyword? Almost no conversions from this type of keyword. It is completely exploratory. Put a different way, bottom of funnel is collaboration software with intuitive learning. Middle of funnel, enterprise collaboration software. Top of funnel, what is collaboration software? So why compact? There's a sort of magic to compact keywords. This is why they are compact. Very low competition, low average words per page required to rank high, around 415 words per page, low effort required. You can templatize and reuse sections across pages, less domain authority and quality backlinks required to rank high, lower search volumes. Because these keywords are so use/purchase oriented, they tend to be very specific. This high specificity gives them lower search volumes. These lower search volumes give them lower competition, and that's the magic. High converting, less competitive, requires less work. Waking up. Top of funnel non-compact keywords have higher search volumes and are recommended by most idiot newbie SEOs for that reason. These idiot SEOs think those keywords are sexy when in reality, they require 2,000. So this is top of funnel keywords, require 2,000 to 3,000 plus words to rank for, don't convert immediately, and they're competitive. And it gets worse. ChatGPT, Gemini, and other generative AI chatbots are answering top/middle of funnel questions. Searchers are no longer going to blogs to get their answers. Google's recent update is prioritizing Reddit and Quora for top/middle of funnel content over blogs. And then I share a post from the search engine optimization subreddit, which I shared on this podcast before. And the post is called "Every Content Site I Can Think of Has Been Obliterated." And then I continue writing, this is the end. The thing that's left is what digital marketers are calling demand generation keywords. I call them compact keywords, bottom of funnel keywords, purchase intent keywords. And these keywords even work with AI chatbots. If you ask ChatGPT for collaboration software with intuitive learning, it will pattern match to the website that has a page for collaboration software with intuitive learning. So it is magic. The last bastion of SEO, and one that's not going to vanish anytime soon. The real trick to SEO isn't head versus long tail keywords, it's compact versus non-compact, purchase intent versus exploratory. Target keywords that are down the funnel, compact keywords, and you will work less and make more. I think that was some of my best copy ever. And I'm so glad that I just got to read that to you. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for listening. This is episode 344 of my daily digital marketing podcast, my daily marketing podcast. I do this thing 7 days a week, as you know, and I had a lot of fun with this one. So thanks again for watching and listening, and I will talk to you again tomorrow. Bye now.